Hey everyone, we're going to dive into something today that seems like it's on a lot of people's minds these days, and that is what happens when, um,
Yeah.
the wife is the higher earner in the
Yeah.
family,
Yeah.
and he's thinking about becoming a stay-at-home dad.
It's a fascinating dynamic.
It is.
It's a fascinating shift, I think, in kind of the more
Yeah.
traditional family dynamic.
Yeah.
And as you'll discover in these sources,
Yeah.
it's not a simple yes or no
And
decision.
it's really interesting. You sent over a really fascinating mix of stories and arguments both for and against husbands
Right.
taking on this kind of primary caregiver role.
Right.
What for you really stood out as we kind of get started here?
Well, one of, I think, the most compelling arguments in favor of this arrangement is how it can redefine what it means to be the man of the house.
Okay.
It's not
Glad.
just about bringing home the bacon anymore. There's this really interesting, I think, reframing of what it means to be the provider and protector.
I'm seeing that theme emerge in these stories too, and it's not just about being physically present, but being emotionally present, really building that
Yeah.
strong foundation for the family.
Right.
Like we've got that story of the finance guy, right? He was at the top of his game.
Yes.
But when his wife's career really took off,
Yeah.
they realized it just made more sense for him to step back.
Yes. And what's so fascinating about his story is it wasn't just a good move for their family life. It was a savvy financial decision as well.
Right.
No more expensive childcare.
Right.
No more juggling these hectic schedules.
Right.
It actually ended up saving them a significant amount of money.
Yeah, it really challenges that whole assumption that the stay-at-home parent is somehow giving up something.
Right.
In some cases, they're gaining a lot.
Right.
Like we've got that marketing executive
Yes.
who decides to become a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
He talks about discovering this whole new world.
Right.
Play dates, parenting groups.
Yeah.
This whole community he never even knew existed.
And more than that, he found a renewed sense of purpose.
Yeah.
He wasn't just dad. He was fully immersed
Right.
in this world of childcare and household management, and he really seemed to thrive in that environment.
Wow.
It speaks to, I think, that sometimes stepping outside of your comfort zone,
Yeah.
even if it's not something you ever imagined yourself doing, can lead to some unexpected
Yeah.
growth and fulfillment.
It makes you wonder how much of what we perceive as traditional gender roles is really just that.
Yes.
It's societal expectations. It's not some
Yeah.
innate difference between men and women.
Absolutely. And this shift in social norms is actually backed up by some interesting sociological research.
Oh.
We're seeing, I think, a trend towards greater acceptance of just diverse family structures in general.
Okay.
Fathers taking on a more active role in childcare is becoming increasingly normalized.
Okay.
And with that comes a greater understanding of the unique challenges and rewards that come with it.
And that normalization is so important because it takes the pressure off of families to conform to some,
Right.
outdated
Right.
model that might not even work for them.
Right.
It allows them to make choices based on what's truly best for their individual circumstances and values.
Precisely. And sometimes these unconventional choices can even lead to unexpected career advantages down the line.
Okay.
We see that in the story of the software engineer who spent a few years as a stay-at-home dad. When he did decide to return to the workforce, he found that the skills that he had developed, time management, problem solving, even conflict resolution, were incredibly valuable.
So it's like that time at home, far from hindering his career,
Right.
actually gave him a leg up.
Exactly.
He was able to approach his work with a fresh perspective,
Yes.
and employers recognize that.
Exactly. It challenges that assumption that taking time away from a career is somehow detrimental.
Right.
In some cases, it can be an opportunity for growth and reinvention,
Wow.
making someone even more desirable in the job market.
Okay, so we've got dads finding financial benefits,
Yeah.
building community, redefining what it means to be a dad,
Right.
even using the experience to boost their careers.
Right.
It's pretty compelling when you lay it all out like
It
that.
is, but like with any major life decision, it's important to look at all sides of the coin.
Right.
While there are certainly compelling arguments in favor of husbands becoming stay-at-home dads in these situations, there are also potential downsides to consider.
Okay, so we can't ignore the potential challenges just because the idea
You'd say.
seems appealing on the surface.
Right.
What are some of the counterpoints that are raised in these sources?
Right. Well, some of the most common concerns, I think, revolve around identity and self-worth,
Yeah.
particularly for men who have traditionally defined themselves by
Yeah.
their careers.
Right.
There's this really revealing story about a former company executive,
Yeah.
used to being in charge,
Right.
making the big decisions.
And I remember that one. What struck me was how blindsided he felt by that shift in dynamics.
He becomes a stay-at-home dad.
Right.
And suddenly that lack of external validation
Yeah.
from the workplace really hits him hard.
Yeah.
And it speaks to this, I think, larger issue of how men are socialized
Right.
to find their sense of self
Yeah.
in their professional achievement.
Yeah. It makes you wonder how much of that is changing, though.
Right.
With, younger generations coming up.
Yeah.
But you're right. For someone who's so used to that
Right.
corporate world,
Yes.
that adjustment can't be easy.
And it's not just about, feeling useful or valuable,
Right.
though that's certainly a big part of it.
Right.
It's also about the loss of social interaction.
Sure.
The intellectual stimulation
Right.
that many people, regardless of gender,
Yeah.
derive from their work.
Of course. And let's be honest, even for those dads who are totally on board
Right.
with the whole stay-at-home thing,
Yeah.
it's not always easy.
Mm.
There was that story about the advertising executive.
Oh, yeah.
Just he's like, oh, I've got this work-life balance thing nailed.
Yeah, he thought he was going to,
Yeah.
he thought he had it all figured out.
Yeah.
And then very quickly realized he'd maybe romanticize the role a little bit.
Understatement of the year.
Right.
It's a good reminder that as much as we should challenge traditional gender roles,
Yes.
we shouldn't romanticize any parenting role.
Right.
It's hard.
It is demand.
Intense.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it brings up another point, too. Just because one spouse can be the breadwinner,
Right.
should that automatically be the default?
Exactly. That's a really good point.
Right.
Because one of the sources highlighted that
Yeah.
it's a cautionary tale.
Right.
Husband becomes a stay-at-home dad because his wife is the higher earner.
Yeah.
Her company folds.
Wow.
And suddenly he's thrust back into the job market after years away.
Right. And he's starting from scratch.
Exactly.
Right.
Struggling to adapt.
Wow.
The workforce has evolved.
Right.
His skills are rusty. It's a whole different world.
It puts a huge strain on the relationship.
Of course. Because it's not just about the money.
Right.
Right? It speaks to that whole argument that
Right.
money shouldn't dictate everything.
Exactly.
What happens if the higher earner's income changes?
Right.
What if down the line,
Exactly.
the stay-at-home parent wants to go back to work?
It's about having a plan,
Yeah.
but also acknowledging that life rarely goes according to plan.
Right.
And, as we saw with the lawyer who became a stay-at-home dad,
Yeah.
it's not just about the practicalities.
Yeah.
There's an emotional component as well.
He started feeling stuck.
Exactly. Like he was missing out on these career milestones.
Right.
His friends are all, moving ahead. He loves being a dad.
Right.
But he also craved that intellectual stimulation of his career.
So we've seen that potential downsides.
Yeah.
Concerns about identity,
Yeah.
the just relentless nature of childcare.
The risks of tying family roles solely to income.
Right.
But I'm curious about the counter-arguments.
Well, it's important to remember that becoming a stay-at-home parent
Okay.
doesn't have to mean the end
Right.
of one's career aspirations.
Right.
It can be a chance to kind of recalibrate,
Gotcha.
a temporary pause rather than a full stop.
Like that IT professional
Yes.
who thrived as a stay-at-home dad,
Yeah.
but then eventually went back to the workforce
Yes.
feeling more energized,
Right.
more focused.
Exactly. It's not an either situation.
Right.
Taking time out for family doesn't negate a person's, skills and experience.
Right.
In fact, in a lot of cases, it can make them more marketable.
That's a great point. There was that story about the designer who went back to work after his kids started school.
Right.
And he felt like those years at home had actually boosted his creativity,
Yes.
his problem-solving skills.
It challenged that assumption that I think a lot of people have,
Right.
that career breaks equal stagnation.
Right.
Sometimes they can be the catalyst
Yeah.
for some pretty incredible growth,
Right.
both personally and professionally.
Like hitting the refresh button in a way.
Exactly.
But what about the financial aspect, though? You can't deny that, money plays a role in how we view ourselves and our contributions to the family.
Absolutely. And that's something I think that needs to be acknowledged very openly within the relationship.
Right.
We have to kind of, I think, move beyond those old-fashioned notions of what work is.
Yeah.
And recognize that raising a family is incredibly demanding
Yes.
and valuable.
Absolutely. It's about respecting each other's contributions.
Exactly.
Regardless of whether there's a paycheck attached to it or not.
Right. And what about the kids?
Right.
Because one of the arguments that you had sent over was that Children benefit from seeing both parents pursuing their passions,
Yes.
regardless of who brings home the bigger paycheck.
Okay.
It's not just about financial provision. It's also about modeling a fulfilling life for your children,
Of course.
showing them that it's possible to find joy and purpose
Yeah.
in both family and work,
Right.
regardless of these traditional gender roles.
It sounds like so much of this comes down to communication,
Absolutely.
flexibility.
Finding that balance that works for the whole family.
Yeah.
Even if that means kind of getting creative and challenging some norms along the way.
Right.
Maybe one parent works from home a few days a week.
Right.
Maybe they pursue a passion project during nap time.
Sure.
The point is there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
It sounds like the real takeaway here is that there's really no right or wrong answer when it comes to this question
I think that's right.
of should a husband become a stay-at-home dad
Right.
even when the wife is the higher earner.
Yeah.
It's really about having those open and honest conversations,
Yeah, I think that's right.
understanding the potential benefits and challenges,
Communication is key.
and creating a dynamic that really truly works for everyone involved.
Absolutely. What matters most is that
Right.
both partners feel valued,
Right.
respected, and fulfilled.
Of course, as individuals and as parents.
Exactly. And who knows, maybe
Yeah.
as we continue to challenge these sort of deeply ingrained societal expectations,
Right.
we'll start to see even more diverse and fulfilling family structures emerge.
Well said. This deep dive really gave us a lot to think about today. So to everyone listening, we'll leave you with this. If societal expectations were out of the picture entirely, what would truly make you feel most fulfilled, both personally and professionally? Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.